Perhaps you've had the frustrating experience of putting something together only to have to take it apart and do it over. That's okay if it's a Legos project, but it's not okay if it's your career, your marriage, or your life. When you get the opportunity of a do-over, how do you break the cycle of mistakes and failures? What can we do to make sure next time will be different? Good morning. Welcome to 2016. There are many of our bowl teams that would like to have a do-over for this last bowl season, I would say. It's a common experience. I just quit watching this year. It was more than my heart could handle at a period of time. Many of you know that each year I take some time off from my usual routine and tasks and kind of go away to focus on the coming year. Do some praying, trying to figure out, what God's saying about our church, what God wants me to teach on for the next year. And it's always an adventure for me. It always starts out the same way, as I just really struggle just trying to center in and trying to be silent. It's hard for me to be silent. My kids and my wife could tell you that. But I try to center down a little bit, and sometimes I feel like I'm ADD. How many of you have seen the children's movie Up? With Ed Asner. What a great movie. But in the midst of the movie, there's this dog that a scientist has put a collar on him that he's able to talk. You remember the dog? And as he begins talking, a squirrel will run by, and he'll just be talking about squirrel. And he'll just be talking squirrel, and it just grabs his attention. That's the way I felt. Anybody ever felt that way at times when you're trying to concentrate on something? There's just squirrels just keep coming by. And this year was no exception on that. I was struggling for a day and a half just trying to get centered in a little bit. And I was beginning to think, is this going to come together this year or not? But as I was paying attention to my not paying attention, and I was reading through the book of Proverbs, and I began to notice a phrase that kept being used over and over and over and over again. And in my ADD, I thought, maybe this is an important thing. And I found out that this particular phrase is used 1,042 times in the Bible by every biblical writer. Every one of them has this same phrase. And it was a phrase that my mom used with me for a lot of times when I was growing up. And the phrase was, pay attention! Anybody had your mother tell you that at some time in your life? If not, I would doubt your mother's authenticity, because they all have a way of saying, come on, pay attention, focus in here. And so I began to think, well, maybe this is something that is important. And as I began to continue to look at that, I thought, these are issues that you and I need to pay attention to. So say this word say these two words with me, all right? Pay attention, all right? Pay attention. And you're going to say, what does this have to do with do-over? Well, this is the underpinning for everything we're going to do this year. Every one of our series coming out this next year has to do with the idea of paying attention to something. There are rewards that God says that He grants to us as we focus our attention, as we pay attention to certain things. And there are disasters that come in our life. There are consequences if we do not pay attention to certain things within our life. And so we're going to focus on that. Each one of our series are going to have something to do with that. I thought about back in my high school situation when I took driver's ed. One of the most boring things I ever had to do, but my dad said, we get a break, insurance-wise, if you take driver's ed. I already had my license, but he said, we'll get a break on our insurance. So I took driver's ed. My defensive back coach was the driver's ed teacher, and we got in the car the first day to take, to go drive. There was myself, a girl, Coach Nelson, and then a guy by the name of Larry Story. Larry was, we didn't know what geeks were when I was in high school, but Larry would qualify. He had the pocket protector. He had a slide rule that he always kept in his pocket. And he got in the car the first time, and he said, where's the key go? And the girl and I in the back seat were going, whoa, baby, what's this? And then he looked down and he said, what are these pedals for down here? And Coach Nelson turned around to me in the back seat and said, "McCracken, this is going to be a lively semester, isn't it?" And I thought, yeah, it is. And Larry Sturry was a really nervous driver. He would get in the car, and like the first time when he pushed the gas to back up, he zoomed through the parking lot. We just missed hitting two cars that were 40 feet behind him as Coach Nelson was stomping on the brake on the other side. And as he would drive, whatever caught Larry Sturry's attention on the side, Larry drove towards. And I don't know whether you've noticed that, but what we pay attention to, we generally drift towards. When my oldest daughter, Tara, was getting her license, she had 3 or 4 good friends that were all around the same age, and they got their license at the same time. And one of the gals, Ashley Wildman, who's a member of our church here, was involved like 3 different accidents in the first 3 months that she had her license. And one of the accidents, she saw a police officer in his car over on the side on Muskogee, just as it turns to Chandler down there, and she's looking at the officer, and she drove right into his car. So she was paying attention, but it was not kind of to the right thing. So whatever we pay attention to, we have a tendency to drift in the direction of the things that have my attention. And now, that's very obvious, right? I say that, and you're going, duh, because we know that. But oftentimes the obvious things are often the things that kind of escape our attention, and they're overlooked. What gets our attention influences the direction that we go, and our direction ultimately determines our destination. And as your attention goes, so goes your life. And if your attention span will allow it this morning, I want to spend a few moments just kind of breaking this down, because this is going to underpin everything that we're going to do this year. 3 sets of words I want to talk with you about this morning. The first set of words is the idea of grab or capture. Now, just think about this for a second. As soon as I walked into the room, this painting grabbed my attention, or more likely, when she walked into this room, she grabbed my attention. Have you ever had someone grab your attention? And when we think about that in terms to describe this phenomenon, grab or capture, there's generally some emotion attached to those 2 terms. If you ever had something grab your attention, it was probably a good deal of emotion that was associated with that moment, whatever grabbed or captured your attention. For instance, you may have driven here this morning in something that grabbed your attention, so you bought that car. You may be living in something right now, your house, that captured your attention when you saw it with the realtor, and so you're living in it. You may be living with someone that grabbed or captured your attention. Junior in high school came up from 2-a-day football practices. School was going to begin the next week or that next day, and we had a game on Friday. And there was a girl in the hallways, the hallowed hallways of Sapapa High School. And I walked down the hallway with my good friend Craig Corrigan, and I looked at her, and she grabbed my attention. I kept looking, and she needed help with a banner because she was just fumbling so hard. She needed help. And so what captured my attention, I drifted over that way, and now we've been married for 43 years. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But whatever grabs your attention, captures your attention, and I won't tell you what it was that, besides her, that did that, but there are some things that grabbed my attention with her. And the reason that you're driving in, or living with someone or something is because you drifted towards that direction because they captured your attention. I think all of you can relate to that. We've all had those kinds of defining moments when we're just going along, doing our own thing. Then, whoa, squirrel. Something captures our attention. What is that over there? And when that happens, it's an extremely powerful thing. And you veer out of your lane and the direction that you were going, and you turn in the direction of whatever captures your attention. And that can be a positive thing, or it can be a negative thing. And like all principles of life, it can either work for you or against you. It doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or a Christ follower or not a Christ follower. All of us have had events. We've had people. We've had opportunities in our past that have captured our attention or grabbed our attention. And isn't it true that looking back, there are people that you are thrilled that you met? I'm thrilled I met Tria. And also there are people that you wish that you had never met, right? Numbers that you wish you'd never called. Business opportunities that you wish you'd ignored. Life was better before those things that grabbed or captured your attention. In many cases, paths that you were on before, you veered off of because something grabbed or captured your attention and it altered the direction of your life. You may have even had conversations with yourself going, wow, would you look at that? I shouldn't go there. Perhaps I need to drive around the block and double check whether I shouldn't go there. And we drive around the block and you go, yeah, I shouldn't go there. Probably wouldn't hurt to go there for just a moment, and our direction of our life is altered. And it creates a destiny within our life. Friends, common sense can get railroaded by the emotion of whatever it is or whoever it is that grabs our attention. And before we know it, we're moving in an entirely different direction. And generally it's emotional appeal that captures our attention. And we get stuck in those detours because something was emotionally engaging and veered us off the path we were on. My observation for my life is that the things that tend to grab or capture my attention, they're often things I should avoid. Advertisers make a living trying to capture our attention. And that's okay. I mean, everybody needs to eat and live indoors. That's a good thing, right? But you need to understand that malls and car dealerships are not emotionally neutral environments. And often the things that grab our attention lead to regret. Second set of words, okay, that deal with this whole idea of paying attention. And that's the words choose, give. Choose, give. Our attention can be grabbed or captured, but we can also choose to give our attention to something or someone else. And what I observed in others and in my own life is the things that I choose to give my attention to generally are things that are better for me and set me up for success. But either way, whether it's something that has grabbed my attention or I choose to give my attention, that impacts the direction of my life because attention influences direction within your life. Whatever you pay attention to, your direction of your life is going to head that way. So if attention influences direction and we can choose what gets our attention, then that gives us some leverage concerning our future, doesn't it? If emotion fuels the things that grab our attention, intentionality fuels our decisions to give certain things our attention. And I think you'll agree that things that we choose to give our attention to are generally far better for us and set us up for success. Now, look once again, just look back over your shoulder and think about it. Imagine things that you wish you'd give more attention to. Some of us who are older wish that we had paid more attention to our health earlier on in life. Maybe you made it through high school and college, but your grades, you wished you'd paid more attention in the classroom, or the way you handled your money, or your marriage, or what's going on with your kids. You wish that you'd given more attention to your spiritual life at certain points, certain junctures in your life. And your life would be better, more enjoyable, if less of your attention had been hijacked to some squirrel that was running across your path and the things that you focus on. Your life would have been better, more than likely, or different. Let me say it this way. Your life would have been different if your parents had chose to give more attention to certain things. I mean, the reach of this principle extends beyond the life or your lifetime. The things you give your attention to will determine the direction and destination of everyone within your circle of influence. So looking back on your experience, that's undeniable, isn't it? I mean, that's a truism. So why then are you and I so easily distracted? Why don't we consistently give our attention to the things that merit our thought? Okay, those sets of words, grab, capture, choose, give. And then here's two more words, all right? Going back to what we started with, the whole idea of pay attention. Pay attention! I could yell that through the whole sermon. Maybe I could, get everybody's attention, look this way. Pay attention. So pay attention. What does that imply? Well, to me, it's one of the favorite phrases my mother used just about every day growing up in my life. Are you paying attention? If you had paid attention, this mess wouldn't have been made. You know, chances are that nobody recently has demanded you pay attention until this morning when I yelled at you, right? They may have thought that. Actually, there's several Sundays that as I look out through the crowd, I've thought that I would love to yell, pay attention! But I fortunately, up to this point, have resisted that thought. But there are times when we drift, and the reality is when we drift, it always, not always, is in a good direction, is it? And paying attention somehow bothers us. Why? It's a loaded phrase. What do we associate with the word or the term pay attention? Why does a teacher have to tell a student who's looking out the window daydreaming to pay attention? Why pay? Pay implies price. Pay implies a cost. Pay implies giving something of value, maybe losing something. And in that sense of loss is what often keeps us from paying attention to things that deserve our attention and would serve us best in the future. Hey, the reason I don't pay attention to my health is because doing so is going to cost me something. I would be forced to give up things that I enjoy, like coconut cream pie and things like that. The reason that your neighbor isn't paying attention to his kids is because it feels like a payment. He would be forced to give something up. Something has captured or grabbed his attention, and the cost associated with paying attention to the right things that make it difficult for him to pay attention to the right things as children. And when we pay for something, we expect to receive something of equal or greater value in return, don't we? And that's precisely what happens when we pay attention to the right things. If you graduated from college, you've seen this dynamic at work. You received a diploma because you paid attention. Now, there were moments, I'm sure, in your college life that you didn't pay attention to much of anything at all, or maybe even high school, but you paid just enough attention that you were able to do that work. And once high school and our college is in the rearview mirror, the voices of reason disappear often quickly. And the battle for our attention becomes severe. But it's an important battle to monitor in our life because it's the battle for your future. It's the battle for my future. Again, as our attention goes, so goes our lives. Attention influences direction. Now, this capture versus pay dynamic explains, I think, a great deal of what we observe in our culture, in our lives today. It's a tension that we're forced to deal with every day of our lives and on several fronts. We encounter it relationally, what you pay attention to. I believe that there are couples here that you could say very easily that you begin to drift apart at a certain time in your life because you begin paying attention to other things. Maybe it was your job. Maybe it was the kids. Maybe it was some hobby that you became involved in. But because you paid less attention relationally, that relationship began to go downhill. You've all seen it in your finances. You've not paid attention. You've set some goals. You've not reached those goals because your attention has drifted off someplace else. You did not pay attention. It's true spiritually. It's true professionally. We encounter it in every area of our lives. There are people, there are activities, there are things that have the potential to lure us away from the things which we should be paying attention to. And if we're honest, the cost of disentangling ourselves from unhealthy relationships or activities at the moment seems too high of a cost to pay. At the same time, the benefits associated with paying attention to the right things seems so distant and far-fetched to the future that doesn't even whet our appetite to change. So we continue to live our lives captive to the things that capture our attention. Friends, this is so central to what God has to say over and over in His Word. As I said, every single biblical writer, every single one of them uses this phrase in their writing. So in 2016, this phrase will be the underpinning for everything we're going to do. Why? Because I want myself, I want our congregation, I want you to choose, to give, to pay attention to the things that God says are important. This is not just true for Christ followers, this principle. What we pay attention to influences our direction, and our direction determines our destiny. It's true for everyone. It's really universal in application. And you can either leverage it for the good in your life or not pay attention to it to your detriment. And there will be consequences. Now, let me close with 3 passages that I want you to consider this morning, all right? First one is this. It's found in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 12. Would you read it with me this morning? Okay? If you pay attention to these laws and are careful to follow them, then the Lord your God will keep his covenant of love with you as he swore to your forefathers. If you do what? There's our word, isn't it? If you pay attention, there's some things that's going to happen, all right? I mean, he says, let me give you a little bit of context. The people of Israel are about to go into the land that God had promised them, and they were to move in, and God had said, I want you to set up this new society, and he gave them a whole new system of laws and rules, I guess you could say, to live by. And when he finished outlining those laws in which they were to conduct themselves in the new home, he says, if you pay attention to these things, I'm going to keep my covenant with you. My love is going to be permeating it within you. Because God knew that once Israel settled into the new land, they're going to become enamored with the new customs. They're going to be enamored with the people around them, the cultures. And he knew that there were elements in those pagan cultures that had the potential to capture Israel's attention. And they're going to be tempted by the sensuality of the surrounding nations. And their attention would be grabbed to the way the pagan nations handled their wealth. So God, through Moses, instructed them, pay attention. Hey, Israel, pay attention. If you're careful to follow them, he says. And so part of God's promise to the nation of Israel was that if you follow these guidelines, you follow these instructions, if you pay attention to them, I'm going to bless you in such a manner that the nations around you are going to go, whoa, who is their God? If you pay attention. But if their attention was captured by the ways of the pagan nations surrounding them, then their destination would be different. And God said he would discipline them. How would he do that? By invasion from the very nations they were emulating. So either way, listen to me, either way, the direction that they chose would determine their destination. And the nations, if they chose to give their attention to what God had to say, it would ultimately determine the path that they would be going down. Second passage of Scripture. This is the one we begin with next Sunday on our Do-Over series. It's found in 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 40. And it's an important passage because it's directly tied to this whole idea of how do you do a do-over? You know, if there's this pattern in your life that's repeated over and over and over, like it is in the New Old Testament. I mean, the nation of Israel would start out, like many of us do at the first of each year, and we'd say, I'm going to get on an exercise schedule. You know what I did on December 31st? I returned to the health club for the first time in 6 months. Because I made a New Year's resolution that I'm going to become fit. No laughter? I can't believe that, you know. But I had this urge that this is something I need to pay attention to, right? And there's areas in your life that I believe as the new year turns over, you think, I need a do-over in this area. There's something I need to do. I would love to have a second opportunity, a second chance to do this. Now the issue is, what do we do with that do-over, you know? And what the nation of Israel often would do in their do-over is they did the same thing they did the last time, and it didn't work so well for them. They would start with it. Their attention would get captured by something else. They would drift and veer off the path that they had chosen, and they would go someplace else. And before long, they'd find themselves in trouble, and they'd start calling out to God, God, help me, help me, help me. And they'd be in crisis. And God would deliver them. He'd rescue them. and they would start paying attention to him, and then something else would capture their attention, and they would veer off to one side. And the cycle would repeat themselves over and over and over again. And God sent a prophet to warn and leaders to get their attention to go in a different direction. So, 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 40. We'll put it back up there. Read it with me. But they pay no attention. Instead, they persisted in their earlier practices. Gosh, how often do our do-overs become really harsh with our lives because we go back to former practices? How many of you would say that you're instruction adverse? You don't like to read instructions? I loved our video where pulling stuff out of the box, and what was the first thing he threw away? Instructions. We went up to our youngest daughter's house, and we got the two oldest girls the 5 million Lego deals so you could build all this stuff, And so I'm sitting down on the floor, and we've got this, frozen Legos or something. I can't remember exactly what it is, but, you build a thing out of the movie Frozen, and I didn't need those instructions. And an hour and a half later, I was searching through the boxes trying to find those instructions. How many times have I tried to put something together, and I didn't put it together well because I said, I don't need those instructions. I don't need to pay attention to those things. I've done Legos before. And I got in trouble as a result of it. So directions, are for people who get it right the first time. So we do things over because we'll do better next time, right? Maybe. This is an interesting thing. We often learn from our mistakes in areas that matter least. And for some reason, you simply don't learn as quickly sometimes in the areas that matter the most in our life. Why? Because we don't pay attention. We insist on doing things the same way as the last time, and we shift our attention back to the same thing we did before, and the result is tragedy in our life. So next week, we're going to talk about do-overs, making sure the next time is going to be different than the last time. And there are myths that are part of those do-overs that need to be exposed. So I'm going to ask you to come and pay attention as we go through this series on do-overs. Third, Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1 says this. As your attention, basically, he says, as your attention, so goes your life, for good or for bad. The things you give your attention to functions as directional beacons for your life. Because attention influences direction in your life. Now, whatever or whoever it is that's captured your attention, at that very moment is influencing the direction of your life, whether it's for the good or the bad. But now that you're aware of how that works, you have the opportunity to embrace this principle and leverage it for your benefit. You're in the position to choose your destination rather than just discovering it once you've arrived. But choosing will require change. And change does not come easy, especially when it comes to redirecting our attention away from people and things that have such a strong emotional grip on our lives. And so the writer of the book of Hebrews says this. He says, we must pay more careful attention, therefore, to what we have heard, so that we do not what? Ever drifted away? Man. It's a feeling that sucks when you realize it. It's a feeling of consequences just piling on. And this New Testament author who wrote Hebrews was addressing a Jewish audience whose attention had been diverted away from the teachings of Jesus. So they began to drift. And they're careening towards things that had captured their attention. And like a good driver's ed instructor, the author is urging his readers to get their eyes back on the road in front of them, lest they leave the road entirely and crash. As your attention goes, so you go. Those of you who are skiers know what I'm talking about this. My My oldest daughter took her 2 kids and with some friends and went skiing this past week. They went up to Wolf Creek, where may not mean anything to some of you guys, but they had 127 inches of base snow there. And I was so jealous that my grandkids got to go skiing and I didn't. But when you first start skiing, you've got to focus on where you're going. Wherever you pay attention, you go that way. And if you're skiing through trees, you don't look at the trees, all right? What happens if you look at the trees and you're skiing? You ski into trees. Not a good conclusion on that ski experience, all right? Not a good thing. When you're going down mogul fields, you find a path that you want to go and you focus on that path and you follow that path down. And if your mind drifts, if your attention gets off, you have what's called a yard sale. You have lots of equipment spread all over the side of the mountain. Many of us have experienced that because our attention got off on the wrong area, all right? And so whatever you tend to stare at is what you tend to ski into. And lots of us can tell lots of stories about that. It's the same principle. So the writer of Hebrews says, you've got to make a decision. What are you going to pay attention to? Because what you pay attention to influences the direction of your life. And that direction determines your destination. We've said it over and over and over. It's easy to see these principles in the lives of other people, right? You're saying here this morning, you think, boy, I wish my cousin could be here today. Wish my wife would actually hear this today. Wish my husband could hear this. I wish, and we go on and on. And perhaps they should hear it. But if they got the opportunity, would you come to their mind as they hear these same words? As they came to your mind? Now, in the few moments we have left together, I want you to not focus on those who aren't here. I want you to focus on yourself, the one who has heard. That'd be you. And the reason the Bible, I think, reiterates this principle over and over and over and over again, 1,042 times, is this. God cares about the direction of your life. He really cares about the direction of your life. You need to understand that. He's not just yelling, "Pay attention!" because he's a mean guy. He's saying it because he really cares about your life. And if God, just think about it for a second. If God, like the creator of the universe, if he's concerned about the direction and quality of your life, and I'm guessing that you also are concerned about the direction and quality of your life. So this is one important thing that both you and God have in common. You're both concerned about the direction and quality of your life. So if you and God are concerned about your future, why are you resisting? Why are you clinging to the things that are grabbing and capturing your attention instead of choosing to give and pay the price to give attention? If it's become clear to you that there are things or people you need to pay less attention to, or if it's become clear to you that there are things or people that deserve more attention, why not follow that? Why not enlist God's help in bringing about the change that both you and your Heavenly Father desire most in your life? I think you know the shifts in affection and the attention you need to make. You know it. As we've talked today, I am sure there are certain things in your life that has come to mind that you're paying attention to that you know you should choose to focus over here. And I know that you know that those shifts in affection and attention won't be an easy task. If these areas were easy, you'd already done them. So perhaps today is the time for you to lay down any resistance that you have to do what God desires for you and you desire for yourself, and invite Him into your life. Celebrate Recovery, we have a deal that we say that sums up the first three principles. I can't If there's an area that you know you should pay attention to and you're not doing it, it's about time to say, I can't do this. The second thing is that God can. And the third thing is, why don't I let him? Why don't I cooperate with him instead of trying to give such pushback in my life because I don't want to pay the price? Paying the prices is so important. It hurts for a short period of time. But the direction of your life changes. Maybe this morning you need to say, God, I know I can't. You can. I'm going to let you. Would you bow your heads with me for just a moment in prayer? I believe that there are situations, people, areas that you have thought about as we have talked about this morning. Areas that you're paying attention to that don't deserve your attention. Would you just ask God right now to help you to refocus your attention? He is going to give you a do-over. Do-overs are precious. Don't waste them. Father, thank you for your word. And as you have spoken to us this morning, we give up any resistance to following your will in this area. And we invite you, your Holy Spirit, to work within our life, to refocus our attention. Father, we will listen to your voice over these next few weeks as we get these do-overs that you so graciously allow in our lives. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. We're going to offer a time of invitation this morning. And perhaps there's something you need prayer about and a do-over in your life, an area that you're not paying attention to. We'd love to pray with you on it. Perhaps there's just been, you realize that you need a complete restart, going in a different direction. And you need to give your heart and your life to Jesus Christ. Let him to be the leader and the forgiver of your life. Perhaps that's the decision you need to make this morning. If you do, we want you to come as we stand and we sing this morning.